Hi all, it's Lorenzo here. KSP next episode 11. We're going to try to get a lunar milestone. Now last episode was abysmal. There were explosions, spinnings, and on top of it all we've misinterpreted the engineering sheet of the vacuum engine, causing many unnecessary failures. So today we're going to start things off with the Bureaucrat 4. Once more lifting off to try and re-enter a unmanned capsule to satisfy the contract lawyers. Now we really need to do it this time because otherwise the contract's gonna expire again and we'll be completely bankrupt. Now we do have the added bonus of 2 communication satellites, totally not failed lunar missions, no, 2 communication satellites in orbit, so we have a bit better coverage for our re-entering capsule. Now without further ado, this mission is proceeding according to plan. No booster failures, no center engine failures. This here is the first stage burning out, second stage separating properly, and well, if you wonder how this rocket has been designed or how it works, please do watch the past 6 episodes. We have been using this puppy a lot. Once again, everything went fine and we are now re-entering, and as you can see on the nav ball, I now correctly use the descent mode to steer the pod. It actually gives you quite a lot of control by rotating the capsule. You can go left, right, up, down, and well, exert control over your re-entry that way. This time everything goes swimmingly and the pre-programmed parachutes deploy and the pod is in the water, and that's contract successful. We did it, the lawyers are satisfied, and we've got some money. Now, looking into the future, let's visit the contract building and see what we have to do now, or what we get to do now. I think it's gonna be, well, first let's cash the money from this one. We'll probably get a contract to, well, send someone into orbit. We've done that already, but when that happened, the lawyers weren't paying attention. So we have currently active just some records. Yeah, we can do that. They will sort of happen automatically. And we can look here, science data, we can do that. Well, no, from the moon, from the surface of the moon, that's still a challenge. Lots of satellite contracts that we can choose from, but they don't really pay so much, so I don't want to do them. If I'm going to do some dedicated communication satellites, I might pick up 1 or 2 of these. And there we have the suborbital spaceflight crude. That's not great, but this one should be good to, you know, reach crude orbit. Yeah, that's a lot of money. We're going to build a booster for it and then get that money. And we're going to use that opportunity to try and extend the stay to 1 day in orbit to get that milestone as well. But first, we have another Lunar rocket sitting in the launch pad. Tranquility 2 modified with a smaller upper stage, so that the engine won't fail and hopefully the Delta V can be achieved within its rated burn time. So 3 mission objectives: basically get to the moon, return some science from there, and, you know, then get back again. The rocket is now, well, get back again, no, I meant transmitting it back. Never mind. The rocket is working fine. Now here we are looking at the upper stage, separating, and as you notice, if you've been watching the previous episodes, you'll see there's less solid igniter, solid ullage motors. They're quite heavy. Removing them added like 400 meters per second per pair, and I've been noticing that most of the time the fuel is already stable before lighting them, and additionally I have a hydrazine RCS system on the probe itself. So I'm also experimenting with that, not having the solid ullage motors. Alright, so we're now in orbit, no engine failures this far. We've got 4 ignitions remaining on the engine. And I've set up a maneuver node to a lunar intercept orbit. It's about 3 kilometers per second, and the node is just coming up in a few minutes. I've used the RCS system to turn around, and I think now is a good time to talk about the probe a little bit. It's really lightweight. It's carrying a tank of hydrazine and the smallest momentum RCS thrusters. They're really teeny tiny, but they won't need to shift anything really heavy, so I went for the small ones. It also has solar panels, but only on one side because the 3 solar panels at this stage of technology are about as expensive as the whole rocket. So if we want solar power, we need to do some active attitude control. Of course, the ship also has a big battery, so it won't need solar power for at least its primary mission duration, which is reaching the moon. And perhaps if it stays in space longer, the solar panels will see that through. So the engine lit successfully. We didn't use the solid motor, and 3 kilometers per second of delta V later, almost through all of the fuel, we should be on a trans-lunar injection trajectory. Shutting off the engine now. Of course, these engines don't throttle. It has to be timed pretty well. And there we are, coasting hopefully towards the moon. Let's check out the map view. I think that's going to happen. And the thing is, we have a little bit of fuel remaining. There we go. Just short of it, actually. That could be due to a mistime of the burn or a mistiming of the engine shut off itself. Now we have some fuel remaining in the tanks, and it would be best to alter the trajectory at the ascending node, like sort of halfway there. But if we wait until then, the liquid oxygen will have boiled off, and well, obviously we won't be able to start the engine. So we're going to do a little braking burn. It seems like we overshot a bit, and that'll be about 100 meters per second of corrective boosting. At least that's what I worked out with the maneuver node. And of course then after that burn, if we at least get close to an intercept, we still have the hydrazine system on board of the probe, which, seeing that it's a really light probe with just some batteries, some small thrusters and 2 antennae, that hydrazine should be able to give it a pretty decent kick. We're coasting towards the point I put the maneuver node at. It's pretty arbitrary, just put it a little bit ahead in the orbit so I had some time to fiddle with it before the ship actually got there. And the liquid oxygen does boil off, but not that quickly. You have a few hours at least. Anyway, third restart of the engine, it's working fine, and there we go, 100 meters per second burn complete. Hopefully that put us on the right trajectory, and yes, it did. Yes, it did. So I think now is about the time to ditch the upper stage. It has, for the first time in its development cycle, performed absolutely flawlessly. Now, keeping it until we're at the moon doesn't serve any purpose because, as I said, the liquid oxygen will have boiled off. So here we have the probe that I was talking about. We have hydrazine on it, we have a big battery on it, and we have some science sensors, and of course an antenna system. That's about it. It's really a simple probe. Now remember, the primary mission objective was to just reach lunar space. If we can get into orbit around it, that would be great. That means we have another communication satellite, but that's not. The mission will still be a success if we don't do that. En route to the moon now, we are doing some science in space high over Earth. We had never ever been that far yet, so now it's 62,000 kilometers. That's a record, and a record. Oh man, pronunciation is hard. And well, every second from now on, this probe is setting records because it's not done traveling yet. Using the attitude jets here to try and position the solar panels to get some energy, but you know, we're almost halfway through our battery yet, but we're also at the moon, and here transmitting science from the moon means our secondary objective and primary objective has been achieved. Hooray! There in the distance you can see Luna magnificently, and we're barreling towards it. Look at that communication network doing its job. We have control. Our lunar periapsis is at the Earth side, more or less, so we can actually reach the spacecraft to give it commands. And we are going to do just that. Now, there were no calculations done on the delta V the onboard hydrazine is going to give this craft. They just tanked it full of hydrazine and said, good luck with that, you've never made it out of Earth orbit yet, see how you're going to use this. So we're going to barrel down to the periapsis, turn on the RCS jets, and see what happens. Now, an unfortunate eventuality of this, an unfortunate consequence of taking the smaller RCS jets is that it takes an unholy amount of time to burn off 100-something units of hydrazine. Oh my god, this took forever. But fortunately, you won't have to watch that because I've got editing software to make life easy for you and dreadful for me. Aren't I a great person? Anyway, here we go. Turning around, messing about with the RCS system, overshooting a bit, and this is because the communication time delay. It takes about a second for any commands I sent to make it to the spacecraft and for it to respond to it. So that made controlling it manually a little bit harder than usual. And I like that bit of realism. I wonder how that's gonna go with a Mars mission. If I'm gonna send an unmanned probe, will it take 15 minutes for my commands to get there? That would make gameplay pretty tedious. It would also mean maybe I would have to use manned missions to Mars only, or probes and then order them to transmit science and fast forward 15 minutes. I don't know how that will work actually. That's going to be interesting. Anyway, here we are at the beginning of this hydrazine burn, decelerating around the moon, and well, I'm at this point pretty optimistic that we can use this craft as a lunar communications relay for the foreseeable future. The only variable with that is going to be the power those three solar panels can provide. Here we go. I think that has done it. Let's take a look at the telemetry. It doesn't show a hyperbolic trajectory anymore, so we still have some hydrazine in the tanks, actually more than half. So let's have a look at the map view. So we have a perfectly functioning lunar satellite. It can do science. It can still do a pretty hefty maneuvering. Yeah, lunar orbit achieved. 1, 2, 3 objectives completed. That is one hell of a successful mission, guys. You in mission control, feel free to party. We still have a communications relay, and well, as I said, we have now assets around the moon that should help facilitate any further missions there, and of course landing attempts. Not insignificantly, with the breaching of its sphere of influence, we now have simulation access to the moon, so we can build landers and simulate them. That will help tremendously in the design. Alright, so what we also got was a lot of science points, and we're gonna have to develop some new technologies. We have, well, as you've seen, we have rocket engines that can at least send smallish payloads pretty far. At least Mars, Venus, Mercury Mercury takes a lot of delta V, at least lots of places. But what we don't have is power generation for that long and sufficiently long range antennae. They are in the nodes down there. But what I would also like is advanced procedural tanks and stuff for better heat shields, and for cryogenic tanking, which will reduce liquid oxygen boil off. Additionally, larger rockets are also pretty great, as they are always great, because I'm feeling pretty tired of the booster we've been using. I think I can design a better one, but I want some higher thrust, longer duration engines for that. So I'm going to mull this research over for a while, click some nodes, and in the meantime design some interim missions, probably expanding the manned program, maybe put something in orbit, some more stations, satellites, and well, we have a bunch of lunar contracts to fulfill as well, like sending impacts and maybe a robotic lander or two. So yeah, lots of interesting things coming up in the next episodes. Thanks for watching. See you then. Goodbye.